Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Demand Gen Chat. Today we are doing another rendition of a hot take, so only myself. And today I just want to cover this topic. It's being talked about a lot online around moving away from this motion of marketing's North Star being MQLs. I think definitely for as long as I have been running Demand Gen, MQL seems to have almost always been my North Star, except for over the last maybe 4 years or so. Um, Marketing has started to evolve, and especially demand gen has started to become much more innovative and further ingraining themselves within the sales process and better aligning KPIs from that regard to sales KPIs so that marketing and sales truly are working towards one North Star. However, that's a little bit easier said than done. So today on this episode, I just wanted to be a little bit vulnerable and talk about kind of what I stepped into when I stepped into this role as a director of demand gen, some of the challenges that we faced, how we overcame them, and then, of course, like some of the actual tactical actions that we took as a result of being able to move away from MQLs as our North Star. So, when I stepped into this function, a previous leader had set up a traditional old school waterfall marketing model, right? As our growth model for our business. Um, Obviously, sales, we have a pretty large outbound function here as well. So sales had their own growth model, marketing had their own growth model, but marketing's was anything and everything you can imagine when it comes to a traditional waterfall model. Started all the way with website traffic and moved through typical conversions, lead to MQL, SAL, SQL, all the way to close one revenue, right? By channel, etc. So that in and of itself has been great for several years. It's worked for several businesses. But moving away from having MQLs be our North Star allows for such greater alignment between us and the sales department, as well as further ingraining ourselves. Obviously, the deeper in the funnel that you can align your marketing metrics, the better off you'll be long term, because that way you're not optimizing your funnel based off of pretty top of the funnel, not qualified MQLs or like leading indicating leads. You're further ingraining yourself in the sales funnel. So you'll have a better understanding of which types of leads, prospects, companies, accounts, industries, etc., convert deep in the funnel. And then, of course, ultimately convert in actual revenue for your business. So, anyways, those are obviously some of our backstory, kind of where we started when I first joined this organization. Um, and then, of course, all of the area of opportunity that's in front of us if we can move away from this MQL model and further ingrain ourselves into pipeline and revenue actually being our North Star in conjunction with sales North Star. So that's a little bit about the backstory and kind of where I knew we wanted to move. But then it's like, how do you actually move past that model so that you're not looking to MQLs as your North Star or your source of truth or your success metric? And so the very first way that we thought to do that would be obviously to start with our growth model. That was our source of truth for our business. It still is our source of truth today. Realigning around this growth model between myself and our sales leader has been pivotal to our success here in terms of alignment and clarity. It's a great source of truth for he and I both to touch base on weekly to just make sure that what he is projecting and what I am projecting are aligned. Nothing has changed. If something has changed in our business, our models, our projections, or our expected outcomes based off of any of the actions that we're taking, hiring, etc., all of that can be easily reflected in this one document. So what better place to start in kind of shifting this marketing strategy than there in this growth model? So we started by actually removing the MQLs as part of our waterfall model. And we now start our top line metric is what we call QHMs, which are qualified held meetings. For any other company, I think this would serve as an SQO. So we don't just want demo requests. We want qualified demo requests that have actually booked a demo and showed up for that demo that now have pipeline dollars attached to it. So most often, I know that there's some level of customization within any organization for how you actually classify each of your stages, but majority I think would classify that as an SQO. But for transparency's sake, we call it a qualified held meeting. So QHM is probably what I will naturally refer to it as. So our model now goes QHMs down. So we have QHMs, pipeline, by product line, for inbound and for outbound. So this provided a great source of clarity for how much revenue marketing sourced was actually on the hook to provide versus sales sourced or outbound. So that was a good like leading indicator and alignment exercise for both of us. And now, of course, everything we do is centered around that. So there's no miscommunication or misalignment. And it's just a good natural place for us to come back to and review it weekly at a high level. What's working, what's not working, do we need to adjust, etc. Um, from there, having this clear alignment around we are here to drive QHMs, the sales team is also here to drive QHMs. It freed us from this notion of having to gate everything and drive MQLs, right? No one like MQLs are a great leading indicator. Growing your subscription list in your email marketing database or your marketing automation platform, et cetera, are great leading indicators, but they weren't the pivotal point of success for us. And so we knew we didn't have to rely on getting a certain number of names every month that were net new to the system, which allowed us the freedom to actually innovate and update our marketing strategy. We were now not dependent on running display ads, which really weren't working for much of anything other than driving false hope around MQLs, right? So we didn't have to lean into display ads anymore. We could ungate all of our content. For us, it was ungating all of our content with the exception of anything that needed to actually be transactional. So webinars and email nurtures. For us, we have a couple of ungating everything except for those things that needed to be transactional. So for us, those things are webinars or virtual events and any kind of email course. So things that we actually need your email in order to deliver the value that you are seeking whenever you fill out the form. Other than that, everything was ungated. So this allowed us to shift that narrative to become a company that is truly focused on educating the market and helping our buyers as well as our customers. Before, with this MQL model, you're trapped into this motion of having to gate everything so that you are ultimately reaching that MQL number. When at the end of the day, if you ungate everything, you show people the value that you as a company, but also you as a product can actually bring to their organization or even bring to their own personal and professional growth, you will see more QHMs, qualified demos, further down funnel naturally because you're spending more time educating the market and ultimately convincing them to volunteer to become part of our sales cycle. Whereas with this MQL model, obviously what you're doing is gating everything before they even have the opportunity to learn about your product. The sales team is spending more time educating your buyers once you've passed over those MQLs to the SDR organization. That's actually what they're doing. So now we're bridging that gap. Marketing is taking over more ownership of educating the market and letting the sales team do what they do best, which is actually selling our product. So that's kind of the unmentioned like split between why that delta needs to happen and why the split in work needs to shift. So that comes when you're allowed to not optimize your funnel for MQLs, which is great. It's a beautiful shift. It also allows the marketing team to provide more qualified leads and qualified hand raisers over to your sales organization so that your sales team isn't coming back to you as a marketer and saying, hey, we're getting all of these leads, but like they're not qualified, they're not ready, they're not engaged, they're not even in buying mode. Like the sales team is then spending a lot of their time chasing down leads that aren't really in the buying process. So moving towards this motion of pipeline and revenue being your North Star as well as the sales team's North Star helps with so many areas that are often broken between marketing and sales organizations. And so I feel like we finally gotten to a point where we can, like I was saying, remove the gates, move towards this new marketing model where we aren't dependent on display ads. We aren't dependent on running 3 or 4 webinars a month. We aren't dependent on attending in-person events, which obviously we haven't been able to be dependent on anyways, but it has been a large majority of other marketing teams' budgets throughout the course of the last 5, 10 years. And of course, over the last year, we've all been forced out of the in-person events world and becoming less and less reliant on massive events that allow you to generate leads or names, which become MQLs, is a really good cycle to get yourself into so that you can spend your time actually educating the market and you aren't reliant on all of these different types of marketing activities that force you into being dependent on some type of gate or lead gen form to fill that top of funnel number. Without them, you shift your mindset a little bit, you shift your goals, you align better with sales. All of those things allow for much more qualified down funnel metrics. So it's a huge mind shift more so than anything. There's a little bit of change management that has to happen internally. But I feel like for smaller organizations, especially organizations that are trying to basically that are positioning themselves as the challenger brand against that um, category leader, definitely have the upper hand in this situation because you are smaller, you're more nimble, you're more innovative. It's going to be faster and easier for you to make this type of marketing change versus that category leader that's likely bigger and a little bit more structured, has a larger team, bigger lift on the change management front. It will take them longer to adapt. So, this is for all the challenger brands, this is your competitive advantage, right? Understanding the market, making this shift, educating the market with your content, all of these things will better position you in the long run and just takes a little bit of internal mind shift, right? To just make that change away from MQLs, get yourself off of MQLs, right? Make that no longer your main North Star, but a leading indicator for how successful some of your campaigns have been or your programs have been that you're running, etc. But anyways, that's a little bit about kind of how we were able to move past this game of MQLs and move to something that's really much more ingrained in our business funnel. Um, and this is of course just like a teaser. If this is something that's interesting, this is obviously not a topic that we've covered a ton on Demand Gen Chat. It was just something that's kind of been on my mind over the last couple of days. So if this is something that's interesting, I hope that this episode sparks some conversation. I'll of course post this on LinkedIn and would love to hear how everybody else is kind of navigating these waters. Also hop over there and comment if you have any thoughts or suggestions of your own for things you've tried, maybe tried and failed or tried and had success with. Would love to hear it. And until then, we'll see you on the next episode.